Hi, so in this video we're going to give a general overview of the NetSparker product and talk about some of our key features which add value to our end users and really set us apart from the competition. As a quick overview for those of you who aren't aware, NetSparker is a DAS tool, and so NetSparker allows us to scan our web applications and search for vulnerabilities in an automated fashion. And NetSparker is a black box tool, which means that it doesn't know about our internal code structure. It sits outside of the application and it's going to search for vulnerabilities in the same way an attacker would. And this is beneficial to us as a user of NetSparker because it allows us to uncover the same types of vulnerabilities that attackers will be able to find and then to fix those vulnerabilities before they're exploited by the wrong people. So we're going to jump into some of the benefits of NetSparker, which really set it apart from the competition and make the tool much more effective and easier to use. So one of the first features that we're going to talk about is the Discovered Websites feature. And the Discovered Websites feature is going to be especially useful to larger companies and organizations because many times over the years, different departments and teams within a company will spin up websites for temporary use. So for example, the marketing department may spin up a temporary subdomain to drive a marketing campaign effort, or an engineering team may spin up a temporary site in order to test some new feature. But what often happens is that over time, these temporary sites are forgotten about, and the organization isn't actually aware of how much web real estate it actually has out there. And so what this Discovered Website feature allows us to do is it allows us to search the internet for all the different sites and all the different subdomains which are potentially owned by our organization. And oftentimes we'll find that several of these sites, which we've forgotten about, either we no longer need them or they actually are important to the organization, but we had somehow lost track of them and we need to bring them into the fold and monitor vulnerabilities on those sites as well. And this Discovered Websites tool allows us to have that information so that we can make those decisions. And so right off the bat, you see that the Discovered Website tool has discovered several different sites which potentially relate to our organization. And the organization for this demo account here is Hooli. And it's important to note that when we're looking at this Discovered Website list, these sites don't yet count against our NetSparker license. They won't count against our NetSparker license until we actually come over here and click Create. And at that point, the website gets added as a target and we can run scans against it. But before that, it's just a suggestion. If we look at it and we decide it's not important, we can also click to ignore it. And in the beginning, when we first log into our NetSparker license, the list of sites it's showing us is based on the domain in our email. So for example, if our email is johnsmith@hooli.com, NetSparker is automatically going to search the internet for websites which potentially relate to Hooli. And it's searching public DNS records, it's searching certificate authorities, and other sources of information in order to bring together this composite list for us to look at. But we can also fine-tune the types of websites that NetSparker is going to discover. And so if I click on this settings tab over here, you'll see all the different settings we can use to fine-tune and filter that list. So we can decide, for example, that we only want to search for domains which have a publicly registered DNS. We can decide that we want to do reverse IP lookup, which means that we're going to, after we identify a specific server, an IP address of a specific server, search for other websites which are known to live on that same server. We can also match based on the name of our organization. So looking for all websites which match a particular organization, regardless of IP or domain. And we also can exclude certain features. So for example, maybe there are certain top-level domains that we aren't interested in, like .net or .edu. We can exclude those from the search results. And maybe there are certain organizations, which we do not want to be included in the search results. or certain IPs or certain domains, we can really filter this list in a very granular way in order to discover websites which we believe will be relevant to our organization. And this allows us to get greater control of our web assets. First of all, it allows us to figure out all the different web real estate that we have, which is available, which we may not be aware of. And then at that point, we can potentially add those websites to our NetSparker license and then scan them for vulnerabilities and secure them if we decide that they're important to the organization. Another feature that we have within NetSparker is this technology section. So let's take a look at that. If you click on the technologies tab and you go to the dashboard, you'll see all the different technologies which NetSparker has identified as it scans your web applications. And this is useful to you as an end user because it allows us, first of all, to get a comprehensive view of all the different frameworks and tech stacks that we're using, which is sometimes hard to come by. And secondly, NetSparker is going to automatically try to identify out-of-date technologies for us. So for example, if I click on jQuery here, I can see a version history and I can see all the different versions of jQuery that I've used. And over here on the right-hand side, I can see all the out-of-date technologies which NetSparker has identified. And NetSparker is going to automatically send a notification to the person responsible, the technical contact for this website, about any out-of-date technologies that it uncovers. And I also have the ability to, if I go over to the notification section, create a new notification which is going to automatically update any person or group of people that I choose about out-of-date technology. And so I can choose to update people by email or SMS. And this is useful because oftentimes, if we're using out-of-date frameworks or technologies, those frameworks have known vulnerabilities associated with them. And so hackers can take advantage of the fact that we're behind in terms of technology that we're using in order to jeopardize our web applications. And it isn't always pragmatic for us to keep 100% up to date with every single framework or technology that we're using throughout our web application stack. But by looking at this feature, we have the information we need to make an informed decision about the risk that we're facing by some of the frameworks that we're employing. And the dashboard gives us a general overview. But if we go over to this recent technology section, we get a much more granular view of all the different technologies which NetSparker has identified. And we can see here the out-of-date technologies. And we can also see if they're still in use. In some cases, they may not be. And we also have various filtering options. So we can filter, by a specific technology, by a specific version, the date it was last seen, and status. So if we only want to see technologies which are still in use, as part of this report, we can see that. If we also want to include technologies which are no longer in use within our framework, but which have been identified as part of the stack, we can see that here as well. And so this really gives us a very comprehensive and yet granular view of all the technology that we're using across our different web applications, which is very useful information to us as an end user. Now, as we're using the NetSparker tool, it's very likely that it's not just going to be a single person using the tool, but that we're going to have a team of people using it. And one of the great things about NetSparker is that it gives us the ability to control the permissions of different users. We can actually add an unlimited number of users if we're using the NetSparker Teams or Enterprise license. And then we have the ability to put websites into groups, and we can put users into groups as well. And this is great because users within a specific group, if we define the permissions as such, will only be able to see websites within their same group. And so this allows us to divide our team on the basis of the responsibilities of each individual user. And we can make sure that different teams aren't stepping on each other's toes and they're not able to view assets of other team members whose assets they don't need to be able to view. And so in order to add a new user, we can click on this team section. And then if we click new team member, we have the ability to enter just some basic information about the person we're adding, first of all, such as their name, email, and phone number. And then we can get very granular about the types of permissions this user is going to have. So, for example, is this user going to have access to the NetSparker API? Maybe our developers need to have this access, but managers and auditors don't need it. And so we can decide that. What types of permissions is this user going to have? Are they going to be an administrator? And what kinds of scan permissions does the user have? Do they just have the ability to start scans, or can they start scans, view reports, and manage issues? If we're dealing with a developer, maybe we want them to be able to start scans and view reports. If we have just a QA person on our team, maybe we don't want them to be able to kick off a scan. Maybe we just want them to be able to view reports and manage issues. And so we can get very specific about what types of permissions we're going to give each user on our platform. And then as we can put that user into the necessary group, and we have the ability to put users into multiple groups. So a user isn't limited in scope to one group. They can be a member of several different groups, depending upon their needs and responsibilities. Now, we don't have to add users manually. We can also import users from our single sign-on tool. So if you click on settings over here on the left-hand side, and you click single sign-on, you'll see that we support several different single sign-on identity providers. And of course, this makes it much easier for us to bring in users from third-party tools that we're already using. And NetSparker is very flexible in the sense that we support several different identity providers, and we support many of the main identity providers, as you can see over here on the right-hand side. Now, let's talk about how we manage issues within NetSparker. If we add a new website, so we're going to click on websites, the new website here. As we're adding a new website, we associate that website with a technical contact. And this technical contact is the person to whom all issues are going to be assigned by default. So after we've run a scan, any vulnerabilities which are found will be assigned to this person. Now, in order to see those vulnerabilities, we can click on this Issues tab and then select the To-Do issues. And these are the issues which have not yet been addressed. And so this table comes up, and in this table, we can see all the issues that we found which have not yet been addressed. And we can sort these by various different criteria. Severity, we can choose to only see critical issues or high issues. We can sort by website group, URL, when they were first seen, and so on. Now, if we click on one of these issues, we can view that issue in more detail. So here, for example, if I'm a technical person, I can click on this issue details section, and I can see, first of all, how confident are we that this issue actually exists. And in this case, the issue is confirmed, and so we're 100% confident. It also gives us some general information about actions we can take to remedy the problem, as well as its impact. And we can track the history of this issue over time. So, for example, we can see that this issue first appeared in July, it was fixed shortly thereafter, and then it was revived again. And then we can see that the person who was assigned to the issue was changed, and we can track it up to the most recent status change here. Now, this is obviously very important to us as an end user because we can make sure that the vulnerabilities are actually being fixed, that they're being fixed in a timely manner, and that they're not revived once they're fixed. Now, if we scroll up a little bit, let's suppose a developer is looking at this report and they come up with a fix and they want to make sure that fix is correct. All they have to do is click on this fix button, and this is automatically going to launch a rescan. And it's not going to launch a rescan of the entire site. It's going to launch a retest to verify whether or not the specific issue has been fixed. Now, we do a great job verifying that issues exist, and we work extremely hard to avoid false positives. And this works extremely well when we're dealing with issues that cause direct impact. But when we aren't dealing with direct impact vulnerabilities, then it's much, much more difficult to verify 100% whether or not the vulnerability actually exists. And so, in the rare case that you're dealing with a vulnerability which is not a direct impact vulnerability, and your team discovers through some manual testing that it is a false positive, you can actually mark it as a false positive here. And so, when future scans are run, this issue will no longer be surfaced or reported to you. And we can change the person to whom this issue is assigned. So it is by default assigned to the technical contact, but if we want to, we can choose to assign it to other members of our team, and we can add a note. And so, the person to whom it's assigned will see that note. And you can see down here in the issue section, some sample notes have been added. Now let's talk about how we manage integrations within NetSparker. We want to make it easy for end users to integrate NetSparker into their software development lifecycle. And this is going to enable them to make a security a real part of their workflow, and make it much easier for stakeholders on their team to find and fix vulnerabilities throughout the software development process. And so let's take a look at how that works. If we click on this integrations tab and we click new integration, we can see at a very high level all of the different integrations which NetSparker supports out of the box. And so we can see, for example, that NetSparker supports several different issue tracking system integrations. And so integrating with these tools will allow us to export vulnerabilities from NetSparker into a third-party tool like Jira or GitLab automatically. And so we can export those vulnerabilities, make sure that they're assigned to the right people, and the developers within those tools can then see the vulnerabilities which have been assigned to them and immediately work on fixing them. And some of these issue tracking systems are actually two-way. So for example, Jira and FogBugs and ServiceNow are two-way integrations. So what does that mean? That means that after a vulnerability has been exported to one of those issue trackers, a developer might mark it as done within that third-party tool. And because it's a two-way integration, that will automatically kick off a retest within NetSparker to verify whether or not the vulnerability is fixed. In addition, we also support integrations with some project management tools like Trello and several common CI/CD tools like Jenkins, GitLab, and Azure. And we also support integrations with some communication tools like Slack, Microsoft Teams. And as a result, you can export information about vulnerabilities directly to your Slack channels or your Microsoft team groups so that the people who are working within those tools can be notified in real time about the existence of new vulnerabilities. Now, if you're looking at this list and an issue tracker or a CI/CD tool that you use isn't covered here out of the box, we do have a very robust API. And you can use this API in order to work with your development team to make custom integrations which are not supported here out of the box. And so if you have technical people on your team, it is entirely possible for you to extend the capabilities of NetSparker and integrate it with tools which you don't see supported here. And so as a result of this, it's very easy for you to tie NetSparker into your software development lifecycle and make sure that throughout the development process, you're adding a security focus to your software workflow. And so that concludes our general overview of NetSparker and some of the fundamental features that it offers. Please join us in our subsequent videos to learn more about about how we can run scans, as well as glean useful information from those scans, such as issue details, as well as high level trend reports.